This is Alan Abrone going live today, ARA Self-Empowerment Podcast. I hope you like, share, and subscribe. I want you to 1,000 subscribers by the end of 2023. I want you to go on YouTube, go to my ARA Self-Empowerment Podcast. I want you over there. I want you to click the like button, click the subscribe button rather. And I want you to share all of my videos, and let's reach this 1,000 subscribers by the end of 2023. I appreciate your support in advance. Now, this ARA Self-Empowerment Podcast is all about community impact. We discuss various topics from religion, sports, politics, figures, news, latest news, past news, and things that may impact us in the future. And so if you have a hot topic you desire for me to discuss, go ahead and reach out to me, inbox me, send me a message, email me. Let me know that, hey, I want you to discuss this topic, and I will do it justice. Now, today's hot topic is concerning the African American community. This entire podcast focuses on various subjects concerning the African American community, but that is not to say that we don't discuss all races and all genders. There's only two genders anyway, but we discuss everything here, and we try to reach out to all communities, various cultures and various races, but we try to target the African American community. So this particular podcast is concerning the unique dynamic of African American blended home, blended families, parenting, and holidays. That's the African American blended homes, parenting, and holidays. And I know you might say, how do any of that go together? Well, it all goes together. And it also, if you listen to this podcast, I hope it enlightens you on many of the problems within our community, our culture, our churches, and even with our children. That's right, even with our children. And so I want you to focus on this. I want you to reach out and share this with other friends and other family members. Now, let's start out. I remember this movie, Django. And many of you that probably like the movie Django, many of you don't. And in the movie Django, you see Calvin. He's the plantation owner in the movie Django. And here come two characters in the movie who came to to Calvin, who's the plantation owner, and they pretending that they want to buy this Mandingo fighter. And as they're pretending they want to buy him, there is Calvin, the white slave owner, and he says something, I guess it could be hilarious and sad at the same time, because it was somewhat of a comedy, but you can just imagine they really did that kind of stuff in slavery. And so there's he's at the table, he said, your first, second, third, fourth, and fifth concern is, can a nigga win fights? Now, understand, I don't use the word nigga. I'm just saying what the movie says. Your first, second, third, fourth, fifth concern is, can a nigga win fights? Then you can build a grand design. Kind of hilarious and sad at the same time, but it's something to think about. When you're dealing within the African American community, so many times we want to come together, we want to progress, we want to reach equality within the United States of America. We want so much within this country, within our family. But as Calvin would say, I'm going to say today, your first, second, third, fourth, and fifth concern is, who is the daddy? Who is the daddy? Before you can do anything, you must, your first, second, third, fourth, and fifth concern is, who is the daddy? Now, once you find out who the daddy is, then you could do a big grand design. You could do the family reunions and everything else, come together and cook pies and chicken and dumpling and meatloafs and you name it. All of these great things, then can you do them. But your first, second, third, fourth, and fifth concern should be, who is the daddy? And like in the movie, some of those, those sitcoms or whatever, they make you laugh and stuff, they would do the little test to see who's the child, and they would always come back, you are not the father. And to all of you that are out there under the sound of my voice, you men and women, any grandparents, so to speak. Once you find out who's the daddy and it's revealed that you are not the father, you need to stop trying to be the father. Stop trying to be the daddy. Stop trying to usurp a position that's not yours. But let's keep going on with this. That's just the first thing we have to understand. Now, once you understand who the daddy is, it doesn't matter how the daddy is, what he did. We must understand those three unique things in the African American community, which is African American blended homes, parenting, and holidays. You say, well, why did you bring up holidays? What does all this have to do with anything? Let's look at this like this. I recall taking a class. It was called Death and Dying. I always bring this up. A lot of people who listen to me, you know, I would always bring it up. In the class, in Death and Dying, there was a story, and they brought out this horse. It was on the table. It's a story. It's called Horse on the Table. And imagine this. You come into the living room of the house, and you see all your family members in the house. And you that know anything about livestock, you walk into the living room, and there's this horse standing on the table. Now, you can imagine if you don't notice the horse, you're going to notice the smell. He probably dropped some dookie loads on the table on the floor. You going, but as the horse is dropping dookie on the table, doom, doom, doom. If he, tail comes up and there comes a one drop, boom, another, boom, and everybody's walking around. Loved you to the moon and back. Love you. Oh, love you. And you look like, did y'all see the horse over there? And everybody's looking around like they didn't see anything. I ain't see nothing. You don't smell that doo-doo? Smell what doo-doo? Huh? That's some chicken, man. They cooking chicken in the kitchen. What you talking about? I smell potato pie. It's a horse on the table. And that's where the holidays come in. You have 365 days in a year, possibly a leap year. And whenever you take Christmas, Thanksgiving, Easter, kick in Memorial Day, and 4th of July, June 10th, don't forget June 10th, where you can barbecue and just forget or pretend that none of this stuff is happening. We're just gonna pretend. Let's pretend that there's my sister don't look like a dude. She's not coming in here with another woman. We just gonna pretend. I don't see her. Y'all see anything? That just all come together and just pretend we're just a loving family. We're not gonna see. We just didn't see your sister coming in with a fade tighter than her brother. That just pretend that it's happening. It's not happening because the holidays has a way of masking reality. Ain't it something? Boy, if it weren't for holidays, I think most African Americans would clearly go crazy. Because holidays gives us an opportunity to pretend. In fact, I think the Hollywood is wrong. Hollywood for years have been giving out Oscars to most European Americans. And the best actors are in the African American community. We are the best actors. We should get not just one Oscar. I'm talking thousands of Oscars because we know how to pretend and act. I'm not trying to put women down, but could you imagine people, doing things and having sex? Just imagine like a business deal, up for having sex, but you don't want a marriage or relationship, truly just up for having sex. And then you get up and say, was it good? I hope you enjoyed it. Have a good day. Did you get yours? I got mine. It was great. Good job. Now we know we're not getting married. It was just business. You got yours, I got mine. You good? You need a towel to wash up? Okay. Enjoy yourself, brother. Everything is great. And then after you get through having sex, whatever, you're not getting married, then you see each other at church. And hallelujah, brother. Praise the Lord. Don't worry about it. Don't let nobody hold you down. Don't let nobody. What we did, it was business. We enjoyed it. Let's just put it behind us and act like it didn't happen. It was business. Praise God. Now, if that's not acting, if that's not pretending, I don't know what to tell you. That's a good job. Get that man an Oscar. almost like in the movie Django, when they got to fight, he said, now you go get you a tall beer. Get you a good job. You did a good job, nigga. Wow. And that's the unique dynamic in the African American community. This is not to put anybody down. The problem is that when people are hurting and people are giving bad parenting and bad advice, they don't want to deal with it. They do like the heart. We need a holiday. We need something to get our minds off of everything. That's what Rome did. Rome created sports and different things to get the people's mind off of things. So people create holidays to get people's minds off of things. Let's get a holiday. We need a holiday real bad. And some people need holidays more than others, but they really need that holiday. And so here we have the unique thing about the African American community and blended homes. Is this the problem? Oh, well, not the problem. This is the situation. Most African Americans think they didn't come from blended homes. They'll say, well, I know my mom, dad, and I know my grandparents, but when you try to go past that, and some people can't go past the parents because their parents are blended, but some people can say they had their mother and father, and then they possibly say they had their grandparents. But after that, and even if you had that, everyone cannot literally say that they were a intact family. And if they were, it still was pretended. Candace Owens, she talks about that, but she doesn't really discuss it. She said prior to the 70s, most people had their mother and fathers. Something to think about. That's something to think about. We're still talking about black parents in the blended home. That's something to think about. But the point is, how many of those mothers and fathers that were there, that were together, was not cheating on each other, being raped, being disrespected, fondled, and couldn't do nothing about it, and had to come home and suppress the trauma. Imagine a black woman being married, but going to work, being a housemaid, because back prior to the 60s, pretty much that's most of their job. They do have a husband, but imagine a white man just coming there, just grabbing on the butt, pulling her panties down. What's she gonna do? Who's she gonna tell? She gonna tell her husband to go up there and whoop him for all the white folks to get him? So yeah, you're right that they probably had a mother and a father. But how many of the mothers were raped? How many of those mothers were fondled? How many of the men were beat up and disrespected in front of their wives? I wish you would study that and kind of look at that. So, and how many people were victims of rape that they just took on the daughter, like, everybody's just not gonna talk about it. We just gonna act like it didn't happen, and everybody is okay, it's fine. And that's where that saying comes, there ain't no half and whole half in here. You put too much emphasis on half. No, quit trying to start stuff. We're all brothers and sisters, and we got the same mama, we are all the same. So the Bible is built on a patriarchal, not a matriarchal system. So most of the time, this is why in the black community, whenever a black man or somebody make it big, the first thing they talk about is their mama. Ain't nothing wrong with that. They don't really talk about daddy. And I know we try to say they don't, but why they don't? Because that's not true what you're really saying about how you love your mother, and it's okay to love your mother. But the real reality of it is most African Americans could not trace their history but through their mother, because they didn't know the father. And if they knew the father was either belittled, disrespected, or was non-effective. Not saying all, but too many, and due to slavery. And then it was passed down. So let's look at these holidays. These holidays is like the hearts on the table. We use holidays to mask dysfunction. We use holidays to mask bickering and family fight. You've been fighting for 300 some days, and then all of a sudden one day, let's just put it all behind us. One day it's like a ceasefire to go pick up your dead. We're gonna just make it a day that we pick up the dead. We just shot everybody and stabbed a bunch of folks. So let's just have a truce on this day. And everybody that got stabbed, give them a chance to heal. And everybody that you didn't beat up and whatever, and hit with bats and bit people and disrespected them and lied on them, and And all you stepdaddies and only your stepdaughters and you cousins that's sleeping with your other cousins, and we'll just let y'all stop fingering each other for one day or a holiday. And this is not to say everybody do that. This is to say too often, and it filters over into the church. This is why you hear pastors bending women over in their office, spanking their booty, like Free Show. Pow, pow, yeah, girl, pow. And I'm not saying you're supposed to do that, but you hear stuff like that. Like I was listening to about this one pastor, I won't say his name. Not saying all pastors do this, but the pastor is sitting in the car, and then he takes his penis out and reaches and grabs a woman's hand and puts, she's saying, stop, pastor. Pastor, no. Now, this is not funny, but, that's, wait a minute. So the pastor grabs your hand, pulls it over to his penis, and you're just going to say, Pastor, no. It possibly could happen. And I used to say that was crazy to do something like that. Like, that's it. But I can literally see people doing stuff like that because they hold somebody in such high regards, and possibly that didn't happen to them before somewhere, you go into these daycares, you don't know what kind of, you see so many nowadays school teachers catching them messing with boys. At first they was always talking about the men, but now you catch so many women teachers getting caught with boys, some of them getting pregnant with them. There they go to their mugshot. They would mess, like, wow. He said, what does that have to do with the African-American blended home? Well, the problem within the African-American blended home is that they have not did what I said at the beginning of this podcast. Their first, second, third, fourth, fifth concern is who's the daddy. See, people don't like the word stepdaddy, even though they are stepdads. They like the word dad. People don't like the word half brother, half sister. They just like the word brother and sister. People don't like to break down who is who, because when you have to do stuff like that, then it brings up the fact that you had multiple wives or multiple husbands, or in some cases you don't even know who the father is, or it brings up so much hurt to some people to have to deal with. And I get that, because when I bring up my past, it hurts. But I'm gonna tell you something about it. When I bring up my past, I'm also aware that I have good things in my life, but I focus on the things that I did bad, so that I not only won't repeat them, but I want my daughter or other people to understand this is not the way to go. It's not to say that you can't remarry and be a stepfather, but be true to yourself. The old philosopher, he said, be true to thyself. Don't lie to yourself. This is what happened. People trying to go and hug a big booty teenager. And like, I'm your dad. You're not the dad. You're not the physical dad. So really come this big booty teen. And then next thing you know, you're in some pedophilia or whatever you're in. And because you're trying to do something that God didn't tell you to do, or you should not do. Your first, second, third, fourth, fifth concern should be who is the daddy. Now, because people don't understand this principle in the black community, because white people, not all of them, let me back up. I don't want to say white people, European Americans, because that seems kind of older, say white people, black people. But during slavery, they instituted these things. See, the slave master, he could walk down to the hut, or whatever you want to call it, the old broke down house. He'd kick in the door, open the door, and just could say anything to the dad and say, get out of here. I want to talk to your wife, or I'm going to sleep with your wife. Where's your kid at? What did I tell him? Didn't I tell him to do? So he can go down, usurp authority, had more authority in the African man's house than the man did. He had more say over this man's wife than he did. He had more say over the man's children. And unfortunately, we go and get into these sins or whatever we do, and whatever. And we repeat Massa, old Calvin. We become Calvins of the world. Even our churches are like Calvin. You go to the church, the pastor got more say over your children and your wife than you do. Here comes the pastor. The pastor can tell your wife more than you can. He can even tell your children. He can even put your children in operation at his church. Have them come into this house doing everything and say that he got more say than you. And you are the actual father. And he says, because I'm taking your authority, your position, because you sinned, because you didn't do right. But then double back and say everybody sinned, everybody didn't do right. But then why, when I didn't do right, I'm no longer the father. I'm no longer the daddy. And I think every black man why did I cease to be the daddy? Simply because my sin, but you persist to be the pastor. You still the mother, you still the grandparent. And you never had sex to produce the child. I think every grandparent ought to do, like in the movie Training Day, he said, look on the side, you got 2 pockets. But I think if every grandparent and every step parent would look down and look on the left and the right, they're going to see 2 pockets. But look between your legs, you're going to understand, you're going to see either a vagina or a penis. And I don't say that disrespectfully. You're going to see one or the other. And then I want you to just think about how many times you've seen that and ask yourself, when did I ever make that child? When did it ever come out of my vagina? And if you can't remember it coming out your penis or your vagina, that's not your child. You are not the father. You are not the mother. You can be a stepmother. You can be a grandparent. Now, your first, second, third, fourth, fifth concern should be, are you the daddy? Once you understand you're not the daddy, then you can build around that and understand, how can I work with the daddy? Well, even if the dad is dead, or even if he's alive, even if he's a homosexual. I'm not saying that the child should listen to a homosexual in the sense of being a homosexual, but he still must understand this is where I came from. Even if he's at a grave in sight, he still has to understand, what did my dad do that was good? And what did he do that was bad? And how can I build on that? How can I honor the good and overcome the bad? How can I become a whole person? Can I have a holistic family? And I don't need to try to create a false narrative of, no, ain't no half, we all one. One of the things I found unique about grandparents especially grandparents, especially in the African American community, it's in the European community, but it's kind of a lot different in the African American community, because we take on what they call tribal. It takes a whole village to raise a family, but that's maybe true in a sense of, if you want to say it like that, but that's not true. It takes 2 people to raise a family, but it takes a village to support the 2 people. I say that because when you got a village of people trying to raise a family, what you got is a bunch of hyenas. That's what you got. You got a bunch of hyenas. Or you got a lion pride that's out of place. It don't take a village to raise children. It takes 2 people to raise children, and it takes a village to support the 2 people. Notice one thing about Paul when he was talking to people in the Bible, in the New Testament. He said, I speak by commandment. Then he said, I speak by permission. He only spoke by commandment when it was his place to speak by commandment. But when it wasn't his place, meaning say, I'm just going to give you some advice, I'm going to say this by permission. I'm going to give us fellowship, but it's still up to you. Huh? But in our culture, we take on the slave master, Calvin, Django. We want to come in. I've yet to see this in my life. I've always been a curious kid, and now I'm even today, I'm a curious adult. I've always wondered why people can have 4 grandparents, like a grandmother, grandfather, on both sides. But there's always those set of grandparents that think they have more authority and ownership over children that they never produced. Now, you might have produced your child and married another child, but what makes you think you have more authority and say over a child simply because you are related to the child? You're still not the father, still not the mother. And so I can understand it. Some of you can't. I do, because I was raised in the church. I understand how, especially African Americans, I totally get it, how we have some of the most dysfunctional churches and dysfunctional families is all because people's first, second, third, and fourth, fifth concern is they don't care about who the daddy is. They're just all about what they want to do. This is why so many times in the African American community, most people that are gay or all this kind of freaky crap that's going on, most of that stuff came from European Americans, not saying all of them, trying to put them down, but it blended over into our culture, right? That's something that we didn't do. Whenever I would look at the show, How to Catch a Pedophile, you would always see Hispanics and European men. You rarely see a black man, but but when you start seeing black men, it's because black men was hanging around European men. Like when I was coming up, if you saw a African American man around a European American man, you knew the dude was doing drugs or something, or he was gay, because you already knew. That's why they came to the hood, because they were looking for somebody to do some coke with them, or they were looking for some dude to turn out to get the booty, you know, whatever. And they were like, dude, this dude gay, because it was almost like, man, was it? If anybody that was raised in my time in the 80s, 70s, you would know. That was really the don't know foregone fact. Now it's so blended you really can't tell, but back then you knew. Oh, I know what y'all. You see, pretty much. And so the unique thing about blended families is there's so much confusion today, just utter confusion. There are people out there that they haven't even reached 35, and you've already got 5 fathers, 5 dads of children. You got 5 sets of kids, and you haven't reached 35, and all 5 of them got a different father. Now that's a unique situation to get into. But the quick fix for all of that, like it was in slavery, it doesn't matter who was the father, because they all understood that Calvin was the daddy. Calvin was the daddy, the grandparent, and everything. Calvin could sleep with any black woman he want. He is the daddy. It wasn't no matter what, Joe. When Calvin came, everything changed. And it's almost like the movie The Walking Dead. When somebody would get bit, or if somebody died, they woke up crazy, like biting people, just bite their throat, just eat. You know. And this is what you see today in the African American community. People getting bit and coming back from the dead, and then they go around biting other folk, just biting them. You know, I heard a person told me this. They said that when you marry a woman with kids, you take on them kids, you become the daddy. Oh, if that ain't slavery, I don't know what to tell you. If that ain't slavery, I don't know what to tell you. I'm a stepdad. I'm not gonna say I'm like perfect. I consider myself a good stepdad. And my first, second, third, fourth concern as a stepdad is who is the dad. And once I understand that, then I can build around that. That I make sure that my stepdaughter has a relationship with her dad. It's not so important that I take on his position, because it's not even my place. I can never take his position from him simply because of marriage. Marriage never takes position. Just like people say, we're not under the law because of grace. Grace never took the position of the law. Grace extended you time to do what you failed to do according to the law. A step parent can never take the position or the office of a father and a mother. Never. A grandparent doesn't make you the daddy. I don't care if the parent is dead. Whatever you do, you can never take that role. Once you take that role, call yourself Calvin. And that's the unique situation within the African American community. We are producing Calvins of the world. Calvin. You know, you see the woman goes up on there, and I bet you a bunch of you can't even understand it. It is so horrific. I'm gonna tell you this. A lot of you need to go back to school. And a lot of time, a lot of us who are producing kids is kids producing kids and have not taken the time to think about what mental cruelty you are doing. It is so crucial. I don't care how much of a stepdad you try to do. I don't care how many hugs you hand out, how many kisses you give. They will never take the place of the real father. Never in this life and in the life to come. And it is almost suicide and murder when a young lady is disconnected from the father, the real father. Almost suicide. That's why you see young girls running away from home, becoming hoes, promiscuous, mental trauma. That's why a lot of African American women, it's hard to deal with them. Most of them have been disconnected from their biological father, and if they had the biological father, they really didn't have a relationship because the father was dealing with trauma that he doesn't even know how to express himself. Or they got into a divorce and he's getting parental, visitation, and then he's fighting with the mother, and he's trying to battle with his own mental demons, and so now it's creating trauma. So many of our black sons are going through trauma because they are being emasculated unintentionally by their mother being with another man. You are forcing a man to tell another man, daddy, who is not his daddy, which is, why don't you just bend him over and butt break him? Just skip through the chase. Just bend him over and butt break it. Get it over with. Quit wasting time. Because that's what you're doing. You're just drawing it out. 18 years of butt breaking. Bend over. Let me get it. Talking about that's your daddy now. Now, do y'all see any similarities here? That's what would happen. Where you have the slave and then the master get a new master. Here comes the new daddy. Everybody's standing at attention. Don't you mess with that white man. And if that white man tell you, do what he say. Now, let's slow down. I understand respect now. If you got a stepfather, you need to follow the rules of the father in his home. But you never disassociate him from his dad. I'm only following rules in his home because that's the proper thing to do when it comes to business, homes. It's called respect, order. But that respect and order never disassociates a person from a parent, see? Because everybody needs to learn fellowship, respect, and order. Because two men need to learn how to work together. So when a son is dealing with a stepfather, he's learning how to deal with another man that is not his father. He's not learning how to be butt broke. But when you try to make him say daddy, when you try to make him obey another man as his father, you butt breaking, brother, sister. That's what you're doing. And then you're hoe making. Meaning you're hoe making. You're making hoes. Because you're trying to get a woman to now follow a man and do things that are unnatural. Like, you give him a hug. I mean, I'm not saying you can't give him a hug, but you can't give one man the same affection of your same father, see? Because he's not your father. He'll never be your father. And so that's why we make a lot of hoes in the black community. We're conditioning women to, it's okay. It's okay to give all the men. That's why you see so many. Have you ever seen it? I used to see women do that, and at first I thought something was wrong with me. I felt it was unnatural. When I would hear it, it would say creepy. Talking about that's my daddy. That's my, or I used to wonder when I would hear people say they would say daddy and say like, that would be the craziest thing to say. But I wouldn't have sex with my wife. Oh, mama, give it to me, mama. What? Why would I want to think of my mother while I'm having sex? The only way a person can say daddy, I know you got all, that's another podcast. I know you're going to say that when you saying daddy, you saying you own it. But how do you say, think the word alone, how does it go with sex? Sad to say, I can see now. Because if you have conditioned yourself to ignore the fact that daddy and sex don't go together, then that means you have done a lot of things that you have suppressed your mind to accept. You just, it's natural now. You know, I guess you, like I was telling you at the beginning of this podcast, that the pastor was in the car and he reached over and grabbed a woman's hand and put on his penis, and she said, "No, pastor, no, pastor." But I guess he wanted to stroke his penis or something, I don't know. But anyway, so you sit there doing that, and so that's what happened. I've seen old men, and they know that people, y'all see that like in schools and stuff, and you'll see them old men look at them young girl like, "How you doing?" And they'll get that look like, and the girl, and then he like, "What you need?" Like, buy her things or whatever. Feel like he just gonna buy himself some whatever. Might well be a pimp. But this is what people do. They learn, they're conditioning our daughters how to be bought. Like, almost like T.I. You can have whatever you like. Wow, really? And so she learns from the best, from their grandparents, stepdaddies, and unfortunately, some of you daddies don't even know how to be daddies because you just learn how to be a pimp from somebody. You just know how to pimp. See, pimps know it very well. See, a pimp knows how to give you very little, but to maximize his profit, but give you the illusion that he's helping you. That's the whole art of being a pimp. See, you ain't a pimp if you don't know how to do that. The pimp knows how to give you $50 worth of goods, like nice new shoes, a nice new set of pennies, for you to go out there and get your stuff all stretched out, get you bent over, get your jaws all worn out, and making thousands of dollars for him, just for him to take you one time to a nice restaurant, which only costs him $70, and go and take you on a shopping spree of $500, but he's making $1,000 a day off you, and have you bragging, Daddy love me. Daddy is the best. Daddy. And this is, you say, well, what does any of that have to do with dysfunctional families? Because half of the people in the African American community don't even know that their kids have trauma, because they're dropping them off at cousin's house, and then they all on the floor fondling each other or whatever. And then you taking them over your uncle's house, and the uncle's over there licking their daughters. And then at the time, some of the kids may be fast tail. We call it, when I was coming up, they call them fast tail. But the problem is that then they come up with mind problems, and then they become embarrassed about what they did. And now this young kids who becoming teenagers are trying to deal with the trauma of that I got licked, or I got fondled, or I got sex, and I don't know how to tell my parents. And now you have a grown kid going off to college with trauma in their lives. Now they have to be married. And so now the new dad, the new husband, or, he has to now try to feel how to deal with trauma. There are some women, they can't even get their breast touched by a man or sucked, because it reminds them of something. So every time they feel the hand, they feeling that big old man, that old or pedophile. And they don't want to do, and you wonder, what's wrong with you? Traumatized. Traumatized. We don't talk about stuff like that. And you say, well, what makes it persist? What makes it persist is that we just sit there and put everybody together. People go and adopt people and talk about, I'm your mama. But you never tell them you're not their mother. So we have a way, and I understand that's how it had to be in slavery, because you didn't have time to try to separate everything. It's just everybody under this house is sons. So some people were cousins that thought they was brothers. Straight up, man. That's kind of sad. That's straight up. And so when I was speaking earlier, when I said your first, second, third, fourth, fifth concern is, Calvin said this in the movie Django, can a nigga friends fight? Now your concern should be, who is the dad? Who is the daddy? Who is that? You ever seen them shows where they go and test and see, because they're disputing over who is the father, and then they go, you are not, or they say, you are the father. And some of the people today, even when you find out you are the father, you come up with some delusional plan to pretend by saying, okay, no halves around here, we all the same. Because you don't want to be embarrassed to say you got different kids by different men, or different, some men, some of you men out there, you got about 12 kids by 5 different women. And it's so hurtful when I hear these young men saying, my brother, man. And they're saying their brother, like, what you mean your brother? They haven't even discussed the fact that this is your half brother. This is from a whole nother line of a woman. And we don't discuss none of that. It's just all blended up. And it's like the running joke among the European American community. Do you know your daddy? They laugh. I was on a forum and we were discussing some things. There was some white gentlemen on there, European American gentlemen, and they were, as they were on the podcast or whatever they were on, as we began to discuss social issues, the first thing they asked me to do, I know my dad, which I did know my dad, and I was born in a marriage. But even in the marriage, there was still dysfunction within it. Even my mother's parents, it was dysfunction. And that's the unique dynamic within the African American community of blended home. Even when you know your parent, you're still in a blended home, because somewhere down that line, you don't know if a European American man somewhere raped somebody in your family tree. Somewhere through that, they have forced themselves on a black woman. And when we go into the church today, it is a unique situation, because the pastor becomes the pastor, the daddy, and the mama. I remember when I was a kid and we would go to church, people would actually call the pastor for permission to go out of town. I'm serious, pastor. Or maybe they call it, I'm just letting them know I'm out of town. I understand if that was your job. Now, wait a minute. And they would say, God made me the shepherd over your soul. Well, dang, just go ahead and give them a nigger pass to go walk. Won't you just pass out a nigger pass? I don't call people niggas, but that's what they call it, a nigger pass. You get a pass to walk town. I'm just saying, you might just give them a pass. Here's a pass that you go out of town. And everybody else look at the who let you? Oh, okay, go ahead, you go home. Wow, so sad. And I'm gonna tell you, and rather than deal with this stuff, people they love these holidays. And if you say something, you just trying to stop us from being together. That's all you trying to do. You just think it got to be your way. This is some of the responses of African Americans. This is some of their responses. Let me tell you something. What is so sad about many of these responses is that even if that's what you felt, I mean, just curious. And I'm myself. I'm divorced and I'm remarried, but I made it my business when I first got married that I want to know the dad, and I want to make sure that I'm not furthering slavery. I'm not going to take part in it. When I married my wife, she had children, but I made it known that I will not be a part of slavery. I will not, because this is not the way it should be. When I was with my wife, I only have one daughter. I made it clear to her that I did not want a divorce, but I did not love her. She didn't love me because I had slapped upside the head and she had lied to me. So, and me, what her lying had no bearing on what I did, and what I did had no bearing on what she did. We both was wrong. But I knew then we could learn to love one another. We could learn to raise this child. But if we get a divorce, this is going to impact. And I said this. Now, later down the road, she might have told a different story, but she knows that's what I told her. It doesn't matter what we did. You have not done no more than I, and I've done no more than you. But you are focusing on my sin, but you're ignoring your own sin. This happens so many times within the Black community. You go out there and you have sex and you make kids. And I'm not advocating lying, fighting, cheating, or nothing. This is why Jesus commands us not to divorce. Because literally, you don't even have an excuse to divorce unless you can prove that you did nothing wrong. And don't be like a lot of these self-righteous men and women. You always try to minimize your sins and maximize everybody else. So what happens is once you create this situation, now you are placing this child in a bad situation. And if you go into a marriage, you have to go into the marriage with that mindset. God did not advocate divorce. God ain't advocating no blended homes. Yes, God incorporates people into the Israelite community, into the Hebrew community. But God is not changing folks' names saying, okay, now that you're here, you are now Jesus Christ. You will never be Jesus Christ. So when he says sons and daughters, he is not saying sons and daughters in the sense of Jesus Christ or the angels. He is still uniquely separated all of that. Even though he's incorporated you in, you are still separate of his son, Jesus Christ. And it's not a foregone conclusion, or we all understand, we don't have to say it. It must be said. I remember my old pastor, Apostle Lobias Mary, when he discussed sin. He said you need to put a tag on sin. And really need to put a tag on it because you need to know what it is. Don't just say sin because it makes everything the same. Everything is not the same. And why is everything not the same? You need to know the gravity, the seriousness of what you are doing. So when you say stepson, you are letting everybody know that this is from a step parent. I'm a step parent. You're not trying to point out, trying to embarrass somebody. You're basically separating the right way and the wrong way. We still love everybody, but we need to understand this is not the right way. And people need to understand, stop all this. This is why I was against the domestic abuse or domestic violence campaign. It's not that I was for people fighting each other and people getting murdered. I was for grouping everything as violence. and not looking at root causes of divorce and violence. Because everybody ain't out there just beating up people. Some people are actually committing crimes of passion. They're getting into fights or whatever they're doing. It's not saying it's right. It's saying that until we understand what would set a dude off to come and slap you upside your head. I mean, just clearly, what would make somebody, I remember when I was a kid, people say, I didn't do nothing, he just came and pinched me. Come on now. Most people is not just walking up to you, slapping you upside your head. Now, some people will, but most people are not. There's something you did that may cause a reaction. That's not saying it's right. It's saying that we now must understand what caused it, and now we must put a plan in place to teach our sons and daughters that, yes, people make bad choices in marriages and relationships and premarital sex. But the most important thing is that if you have a child, you need to understand who is the daddy. And if you cannot coexist or to deal with each other or get in there and work and overcome the mistake or the sin or the actual bad choice, you need to learn how to go your separate ways. I remember the guy told me that. He said, people need to learn how to go their separate ways. And that's true. And going your separate ways doesn't mean ignoring your responsibility. Going your separate ways means you need to learn that this is sin. This is something God didn't plan to do. And if you got to lie to get a man, or lie to keep a man, if you got to beat up a woman, or choke a woman, or grab a woman to get a woman, neither one of y'all need each other. You just need to go your separate ways. And going your separate ways means that now that we understand it, that doesn't mean you go and say, he did this to me, and she did to me, trying to make yourself look better, trying to minimize what you did, maximize what he did, or minimize what you did and maximize what she did. And all you doing is turn up the child. Both of y'all pulling at the child or children and turn them up. And so if you find yourself in a unique situation or really terrible situation with multiple parents, it's a hard job, but somebody got to do it. Oh yeah, it's a hard job. It's a hard job, but most of you guys want to make people uncomfortable so you can be comfortable. You should have thought about that. And if most people would put a tag on sin, if more people would address the dysfunction